You
the
know what,
first
Peter,
crack.
you're so passionate about this one. I'm going to let you go first. Go
Okay,
for
okay.
it. Just rip it apart. Do,
I'm
do your
gonna.
thing.
Hardening sprints are crap, guys. It's so like. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Agile or BS. This is Peter Saddington with my awesome colleague from Agile for All, Bob Hartman. We love answering all your Agile and Scrum questions. And one that comes up sometimes now and again, at least in my classes, is this idea of hardening sprints. Now, I wish I could remember where this idea came from, these hardening sprints. Was it a response to the complexity of the work that we're doing today? Or is it just an excuse to not do testing during the sprint? I think you guys know where I'm headed with this, but I get pretty salty about this because whenever I hear it, I'm like, why? Why is that even an option to think about? But I'll throw it over to you, Bob. Here's the question for everyone out there. I'm a little scrambled thinking about it because I get so heated about it. Are hardening sprints real agile, or is it just BS? Bob, I'll let you take
You know
the
what,
first
Peter,
crack.
you're so passionate about this one. I'm going to let you go first. Go
Okay,
for
okay.
it. Just rip it apart. Do,
I'm
do
gonna.
your thing.
Hardening sprints are crap, guys. It's so like every time I hear it, it's like you're using this as an excuse to not do sound testing in the sprint, which is more than just a throwing it over the wall to a QA engineer or a QA team. It is a collaborative opportunity. So whenever someone brings up a hardening sprint or anything like this, where we have, we build it, we build the work, we develop the work, and then the next sprint we test the work. That's what hardening sprint usually means. For me, I tell my team members, I tell my clients, I tell my students, I say a hardening sprint should never be used. It is a lack of discipline in our development team to bring collaborative play into the work to say, okay, you're building it. Amazing. Excellent. Let me pair with you. Maybe we can look up test-driven development. Let me pair with you and let's start testing it, or let's do testing as we build it to reduce risks, to reduce platform exposure, to find out. We talked about this in so many of our different videos. When do you want to know you're wrong, right? Engineers need to validate their assumptions, their assertions as fast as possible. Testing is the best way of doing this. It's a great way for the testers to understand why they're coding it. Developers are coding the way they're coding, to learn maybe the syntax and the vernacular that they use so they can create better test scripts. It's an opportunity for developers to learn about how the testers, their paradigm, their mental models around how they test, what vernacular they use, maybe some of the gaps between how we code it, how they test it, how they view it, how they read it. I mean, it's such a learning opportunity. Let me boil it down. Testing while you're sprinting is the best way to have collaborative play between core engineers, core testers, to learn how to build product better together. It is foolhardy and foolishness to have engineers code, throw it over the wall and say, good luck, do a good job. And these QA engineers are just salty all day because all they do is find errors. They kick it back to the engineers and they're like, you messed it up. It's like, okay, well, what do I need? Okay, that conversation could have happened during the sprint instead of now a transactional and somewhat aggressive conversation after the fact. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to, for everyone that's watched these things for as long as we've been doing, I'm an engineer. So I have personal biases and personal passion about it. Hardening sprints is the best way to waste money, burn time, and ensure that your development life cycle is far longer than necessary. Period. Full stop. I'm done.
Yeah, but you don't feel very strongly about it at all.
No, I don't. I'm totally open to suggestions.
I'm going to see how you end this one with the comments question. Right? So anyway, yeah, hardening sprints, total BS. I think we fall into the trap in a variety of ways. And one is we get in the mode where we say we have to go at this speed in order to finish in time. And don't worry about it. We've reserved time at the end for bug fixing. Well, basically, you're not being agile anymore, right? You're building crap upon crap upon crap upon crap. And, as another one of our colleagues has said, John Miller once said, build enough corporate crap, it turns into corporate diarrhea. What do you do? When does it stop? And a hardening sprint isn't going to get you there, right? I mean, it's going to take you longer, right? To make it badly and then to fix it takes longer than doing it right the first time. And so let's figure out what our actual pace is, what we can do sustainably with quality, and use that as our pace. Let's not use some artificial thing where we have to get things done every sprint and there's got to be 10 of them or we're not going to finish in time. That's all BS. The whole concept of an agile project is if you have a fixed date, the scope floats. If you have to do 10 things per time, what happens when they add something to your list? Or what happens when they change things? It doesn't work out. So the whole concept is flawed. Now, the idea of a hardening sprint to me is really weird because I can't think of a single product that I've ever worked on or a team worked on where it was good to have it bad, and then you even had a chance to make it good at the end. I mean, Peter, think about cars, right? Let's build the car, and then at the end, oh yeah, let's take this however long to make sure every car is hardened. Would you buy that piece of crap?
No,
I wouldn't. No, exactly right.
That's a great analogy. I'm writing that down. Kind of like your Tetris analogy.
It's crazy. That it's just nuts to think that that's okay. I always want to make sure we're valuable, and our definition of done. This is where we're falling down. Definition of done has to say it's passed all the tests. If it's not done, you didn't finish in the sprint. Your velocity or whatever you want to call it is 0. Sorry, 0. Oh, that'll make them feel bad. Good. It's called a retrospective for a reason. Fix the freaking problem.
You got it.
But no, we're not passionate about it at all. So we're calling BS on this one big time.
Calling BS on this, guys. Obviously, we're just two men. So we have opinions. There's a little bit of passion for me, a little bit of passion for Bob around this hardening sprint idea. Now, I think it's important for everyone out there to take it with a grain of salt, right? I mean, actually, no, I'm gonna renege on that. No, there's no grain of salt here. Don't ever do hardening sprint. You lack discipline. Your lack of discipline. What's the Star Wars, right? Your lack of faith is disturbing. Is what Darth Vader said. Your lack of faith is disturbing. The faith in Scrum, the faith in good development practices is where you need to focus on. So guys, we have opinions, but there's also a comment section.
I think, Peter, there's also something that we need to take into account, and this just dawned on me, which is I wouldn't call it a hardening sprint, but every once in a while, you're in a project that requires some sort of incredibly expensive testing. And so let's say security testing of penetrative nature, so penetrative testing. How do we do that more often would be my question, rather than delaying it all the way until the end? Because some people could look at that end and say, that's when we're going to do the hardening for security. I think we still have to figure out how to do a lot of that as we go. But it may not be every sprint, but it should be within the fabric of our sprints that we're doing some of that, because some of that testing can be rather costly. And I mean, I don't want to run a $10,000 test every sprint.
Understood. And I'm gonna approach this from the position of you are my client, giving me excuses as to why you're doing this foolery that you're doing, because exactly what you just said sounds like positive rationale for this idea, but I'm going to throw it right back at you, Bob, because you have said multiple times that sometimes it's better to go slower. Let's refer to testing here, slower in development to go faster in the future, right? Good quality stuff. And I always use this in my classes, Bob's definition of done, which is you're done when you don't have to think about it anymore. And so these are, I'm just using your words back to you, man. Like,
damn you.
I know. Like, there is no reason, there is no rationale ever for a hardening sprint. And let me answer your question from a client perspective. Okay, so it's a really costly testing. Well, costly testing is not an emergent unknown that suddenly pops up and it's like, hello, we have $500,000 worth of regulatory audit and compliance, testing we have to do. You knew this. You knew that this costly, expensive, let's say, audit, regulatory compliance testing, these do not emergently show up randomly. These are known knowns in most cases. So what does this require? A great retrospective, let's just say we missed it last time, to talk about, hey, maybe in our next sprint planning, since we know that we have very expensive testing at the end that is relatively well documented. Let's assert that it's regulatory or audit, which is relatively well known. Maybe we should engage with our security personnel in sprint planning. Maybe we should bring our audit and regulatory guys into sprint planning so that they are aware that we're trying to build this out that needs to meet some sort of standards or some sort of compliance, and maybe engaging with the people earlier in sprint planning will avail us the opportunity to figure out how we can engage with them and integrate with that heavy cost testing during the sprint, as opposed to saying, hey, audit regulatory guys, we're done. Let's see if it's compliant. Like, please, conversations, people, let's be human. Let's invite people into the conversation. I find it a very poor excuse to ever talk with an audit, regulatory, compliance person, or heavy testing that is relatively known to be an emergent surprise. I just do not believe that is true ever. You know about it. At least you know that it might be coming up. Let's engage with those entities, those individuals earlier in sprint planning so that we can create the right cadence of engagement and create the right integration so that we can test it during the sprint and not have a hardening sprint. Because if I could talk about this forever. It's so frustrating. That hardening sprint, Bob, sometimes turns out to be 3 or 4 sprints long because of the amount of emergent testing and emergent discovery of crap that we figured out that didn't work. And then suddenly now we have six sprints, like 3 months of just testing because we didn't do it up front. Come on, man. I'm done.
Yeah, well, and Peter, and then of course your next project is behind, so you have to squash that timeline and go fast, which means lousy quality again. So it gets even worse.
I'm just projecting my own insecurities and frustrations of projects that might or might not be in flight currently. So, guys, thanks for joining us in this wild episode of Real Agile or BS. We've been talking about hardening sprints. Again, we have opinions, but there is a comment section below. So if you disagree, feel free to let us know. If you're really savvy, you can go to agileforall.com, check out our forum and our community, and let us know your disagreements there as well. Follow us on Twitter. Obviously, subscribe and smash the like button. And we'll see you in the next one.